Hello, Sandeep sir. Hello. Hi,
Hi.
Gaurav. Namaste,
Hi, good
namaste.
evening.
How are you? How are you?
Fine,
Let's see how
Good.
thanks.
many. Good, good, good. We've got people joining in.
Mm-hmm.
Welcome, Shilaka. Welcome, Samanyu, Vikas. Welcome, welcome. Welcome to Rupa Manjri, Sunilji, Nandalal. People are joining in now, and I'll keep welcoming them as they come. I will need 2 more minutes before I will introduce Dr. Sandeep Tiwari to you, friends. Thank you for being here for this webinar, which will be an eye opener. And your presence here means a lot to all of us because that means that you're committed to the well-being of our elephant, Asian elephant, which is now facing grave crisis. And its Asian elephant is in 13 range states, and a lot of places it's very very low in numbers. India probably has the highest population, and we need to safeguard it. It's also the gardener of our jungles, right? So I'll quickly tell you a bit about. I'm not going to go deep into elephant ecology because that's not my subject, but I'd like to share that Asian elephants have a complex social structure with females living in matriarchal groups and males typically leading solitary lives or forming temporary groups. You know, like how my friend Vivek Menon he calls them near persons because they're known for their intelligence, memories, and very strong social bonds. So, uh, I won't share more now that you're here, and we've got people still joining in. In the meantime, I'd like to welcome you all again for this absolutely path-breaking webinar by Dr. Sandeep Tiwari. Who is Dr. Sandeep Tiwari? Let me quickly introduce. So, a wildlife biologist and a conservationist. That's what he is. Dr. Sandeep Kumar Tiwari has been working on wildlife research and conservation for over 3 decades. He currently works as Director and Chief of Conservation at Wildlife Trust of India and specializes in elephant ecology and behavior, wildlife corridors, policy and human wildlife conflict mitigation, including linear infrastructure mitigation. He holds a PhD in the ecology and behavior of Asian elephants. He's a member of various government committees, including the Steering Committee of Project Elephant, which is in the Ministry of Environment, Forest and Climate Change, Government of India. He has co-authored the book that brings together for the first time a comprehensive list of elephant corridors across India with its present status. He's a member of the IUCN's SSC Asian Elephant Specialist Group, the IUCN World Commission on Protected Areas Connectivity Conservation Network, and the IUCN WPA SSC Biodiversity and Protected Areas Network. He has authored 5 books and several scientific publications and reports. He also holds a doctoral degree in alternate medicine. That's fantastic. Absolutely wonderful. So, Dr. Sandeep Tiwari, I'll just tell you, we've got about 80 registrants so far, and attendees here, and we have more joining in soon. In the meantime, I'll quickly ask Gaurav to introduce himself before I hand
Thank,
over the Dr.
Thanks. Good
Tiwari.
evening, everyone. My name is Gaurav Nalkur. I am a passionate birder and an avid nature lover, and I'm also a strong believer in the opinion that wildlife tourism can be a great tool to help and aid wildlife conservation and awareness. I'm qualified as a wildlife biologist. I've worked on giant squirrels. I've worked on bird niches in the Himalayas, and currently I'm training to be an ecotourism specialist with Asian Adventures. And I've been lucky to work for the last 5 years with Mohit and Asian Adventures, both of whom share my vision of uniting the worlds of wildlife tourism and conservation.
So, friends, I have to tell you about Gaurav. Gaurav is the man behind the scenes. His team and he are responsible for putting all these webinars together. It's a lot of hard work to coordinate, to put these things across, to send out emails, and various other things. So thank you, Gaurav, for being here.
Thank you so much.
Now, and now I'd like Dr. Sandeep Tiwari to start with his magic.
Thank you. Good evening, everybody, and thanks so much, Mohiji, for the kind introduction. Happy to be part of the webinar, the first series that we are starting, and talking about a creature that's so close to our heart. Not to my heart only, but to all of us, because I believe that the elephant also represents we all, the human beings, right? Something that is so closely related with our culture, religion, our ethos, and species that's revered as Lord Ganesha, a species that has been conferred the status of the National Heritage Animal of India in 2010. A species that has been so close to our heart that, we all love to talk about it, and we all want to see that the species survives and survives well. But before I move into the issues that the Asian elephant faces, let's talk a bit about the species, know a bit about where they are found and what the numbers are. So if you look at, elephants are found in Asia, in both South and Southeast Asia, in 13 countries, spread over an area of about 500,000 square kilometer, and numbering about 50,000 animals in the wild and about 15,000 elephants in captivity. Find the word captivity and not domestic animals, because they are the animals that is found in the wild, and we have been using it and bringing it to captivity. And if you look at the numbers, India has almost about 60% of the numbers. And if you look at in terms of the numbers, the country that has almost these elephants is Vietnam. And unfortunately, if you can look at the entire population, the population in many of the countries in Southeast Asia are on the decline. And that's what is of concern for all of us. The species, if you see, also enjoys a quite high level of protection, both internationally and nationally. It's included in the Appendix 1 of CITES, so it brings in total protection in terms of the trade of the species. It's included as endangered in the IUCN Red List, and the Sumatran elephant, which is one of the subspecies of the Asian elephant, is labeled as critically endangered. It is also included in Appendix 1 of the Convention of Migratory Species. Just to give you an idea of a few of you who may not be aware, as I said, the country has about 29 to 30,000 elephants in the wild, largely, distributed in 4 larger ranges of pockets. One is the Northeast India in the state of Assam, Arunachal Pradesh largely, but also small population, Tripura, Mizoram, Manipur, and numbering about total 10,000 odd elephants. The Central India population, which was earlier largely confined to the southern Bengal, Odisha, and Jharkhand, now they are moving to, they have now moved and colonized in Chhattisgarh, and now they are moving further to Madhya Pradesh, and now further west even to Maharashtra and Goa. The southern India population, which is largely confined to Tamil Nadu, Karnataka, and Kerala, and with a small population in Andhra Pradesh. And the northwest population is largely in the state of Uttarakhand, in the entire Terai belt, extending till UP, Pilibhit, and Dudhwa landscape. The elephants in our country is, we also have been, the various management units in the country, and there are about 33 elephant reserve covering an area of about 65,000 square kilometer, which this elephant reserves cover across 10 elephant landscapes in 14 states. So that's the status of elephants in the country and in terms of the distribution. But what exactly is an elephant? How do we define elephants? And when you talk about elephants, is different thing to different people. Is a huge animal that a child or anyone will portray. Is a friend from a house. It's a keystone species for ecologists and conservationists. It's a beast of burden or a concern for people who are facing conflict issues in various landscapes. So, there are various notions and conceptions about the species. But if you want to summarize the species, we summarize the species in these 4 words, which, if you understand it well, it will summarize you what this animal is, what's the ecological and behavior of the species. The first thing is, it's large. And even your 3-year son or daughter can say that it's large. But since it's large, it also has large food requirement. It consumes about almost 250 kgs of food and an equal extent, quantity of water a day. Right? And only such forests can sustain these elephants, which can support so much quantity of food. And when you try and confine these animals into a small area, they will eat up the forest, because these elephants are also wasteful feeder. Only what they eat, almost 35 to 40% of the thing is digested. Rest they are all scattered out, and they are also wasteful feeders. So if you're confining them to small areas, they eat up the forest. So most important thing for this elephant, that they have to move from one forest to another. So they are big nomads. They have to move from one forest to another forest so that they meet their food requirement. They're highly social animals. They stay in this is a matriarchal society with the female leads. They stay in a family unit, and the entire family unit moves together, feeds together, stays together. Right. So when we talk about conservation initiatives, we should be talking about the conservation initiative for the entire family or clan or the herd, and not talk about conservation, looking at 1 or 2 animals. And generally, when we see in a conflict scenarios, when there's a conflict issue, we say, just remove this animal or that animal, which is creating issues in the state. So we have to talk about this. You need to talk about this in totality, looking at the entire family unit, looking at the entire. And these are the animals that are quite intelligent. They're intelligent to know how to keep their family together. They're intelligent enough to know where to get food, which season, where in the monsoon you'll get one sort of food, or where in the dry season you'll get some other type of food. Where in the landscape you can go for water, or where the places they are thick. So they're quite intelligent animal. And if you understand this 4 word, you can understand the requirement of the species and what it takes to conserve this species. Just for few of you, when you talk about the role of elephants are considered as the architect of the forest, what you call as the ecosystem engineer. And why so? As I said, the elephant is a large-bodied animal. So when they move to the forest, when they move to the dense vegetation, they create opening through the forest. And that opening also has the movement of many other species. When they are feeding, they are also eating certain foods, plants, and there are a lot of things that drops there. And that also serves as a feed for many other herbivore species in that area. They consume a large spectrum, large number of species. It's believed that about 100 plus species of plants that they have been consuming. So when they eat these plants, along with the plant and the fruit, it also goes into the body. And when the animal moves from one area to another, and when they defecate, these seeds get dispersed from one place to another. So they are also work as a seed dispersal. And as a reason, you can say, why we call them as ecosystem engineer. The food, as I said, they have a very weak digestive system. Only about 35-40% of the food that they eat are digested and rest are excreted out. And the excreta contains large number of food that serves as a food for many other species of those birds and other species, animals. They know where to get water, especially in the crunch scenarios in the dry time, and look for water. And being a large species, when they die, there are many other animals that feed. And these are just few of the examples that I talk about. When I spoke about the requirement, I said it's a large-bodied animal. It requires large extent of food. And a forest that is able to sustain that sort of requirement for these elephants and sustain the elephant is also serves as an umbrella for the protection of many other species, and hence also known as umbrella species. And keeping in mind this ecological role and the role that it plays in the environment is also considered as a keystone species. And looking at its iconic and cultural value, we also call it a flagship species. So that's the reason when we talked about that what is the need of elephants conservation, that this also defines that. And there are just few of the things that have captured their major such uses of elephants in the entire ecosystem and the entire food web that they think. But today when we look at elephants and the way they're distributed across the landscape, these Asian elephants are distributed in a patchy landscape that also has about 1.4 billion Indians staying in the landscape. And looking at the landscape that they require, the food requirement that they have, the terrain that they favor, are also the places where the human civilization also grows. So both the humans and the elephants are almost sharing the same landscape, especially with the increasing human population, increasing need for land, for agriculture, for settlement, and for other needs. So you see an entire landscape, the mosaic, which has forest and non-forest areas, and these are the places also when this animal lives. Globally, if you look at the habitat loss and habitat degradation are the main drivers for biodiversity loss globally. And if you can look at the global statistics, in last 30 years, the world has lost about 178 million hectares of forest. And that's a huge number. And it's believed that in next 70 to 80 years, almost 1/4 of the Earth's natural habitat would be gone if no urgent actions are taken today. In terms of elephants, if you look at, again, as I said, they are the animals which shares a landscape that is also shared by the human beings. And this landscape, the populations in the various countries are increasing at the rate of about 0.5 to 1.5 per annum. So it talks about the land surface remains the same, the forest remains the same, and human population is increasing. And it is believed, based on a very recent work published in Nature, it's believed that almost 2/3 of the habitat that was suitable for elephants have been lost in last 300 years. And the rate of loss in recent few decades have been quite rapid. Just to give you an example, that if you look at Western Ghat itself, in last 70 to 80 years, it has lost almost about 1/3 of its forest cover. And that's quite an alarming rate at which we are losing our forest. And what has that resulted in? It resulted in that the human and the elephants are living in a close interface, and that has led to negative interaction between the species and the human. And on an annual basis, in the entire range country, that is 13 countries, almost about 650 to 700 people die every year just because of elephants. And this number, if you look at India, is quite alarming. About 500 plus human deaths are happening every year because of elephants. And had this been in many other in other continent, probably it would have been declared as a disaster. But it is our ethos, our love for the species, our connect with the species, that in spite of 500 human deaths every year, 500 plus human deaths every year, we still think for the conservation of the species. We still, and when we use the word we, I didn't really mean the conservation world or the people, who are mandated, but each and every Indian or each and every human being in the range countries feel for this animal, wants to save this animal. And that talks about the ethos that we people have for the creature, and especially for elephants. If you look at in terms of elephant death, again, across the 13 range states, about 400 to 450 elephant deaths occur every year because of man-made reasons, and almost one-fourth of it is in India. And the most unfortunate part, if you look at the numbers of deaths of elephants that's happening in the country because of human-induced reason, almost 60 plus percentage of the deaths are happening due to electrocution, largely intentional and sometimes unintentional, when you're putting, unscientific rock fences across your agricultural land, trying to keep the smaller animals away. In certain cases, even the elephants away, the animals are getting electrocuted. Sometimes they get electrocuted because of the sagging distribution line in passing through many of the forest area. And also a sizable percentage of elephant death happen because of the linear infrastructure, especially being hit by the moving railway train in the country. Just to give you a small picture of snapshot of the elephant mortality due to the linear infrastructure, especially the railway, since 1987, the country has lost a minimum of 367 elephants as of 2 days back. And the largest percentage, as you can see, is in Assam and West Bengal. And this is a concern. And with the increasing, with the country's aspiration of economic development, with our our aspiration of increasing our infrastructure, this is going to be a major concern. And probably we need to spend a little more time on a drawing board to see that yes, the roads and railways are the lifeline of a country and of an economy, and that's needed. But how do we plan these railway lines and or power lines or roadways in a way that it has minimum impact on the animals? And that is what we need to probably think a little more, and not just be thinking that we don't need any railway lines or power lines, but probably planning a little more so that we are more responsible towards the animal itself. Not only loss of human life and the animal, but a large quantity of crops are getting damaged, houses are getting damaged, and about 500,000 families get affected every year because of elephants and elephant attack. Because of all this conflict increasing, the tolerance of the people are also decreasing. And believe me, I've been working since last 3 decades, wherever and whichever landscape I've been going until now also. When we talk to the people in the fringe area, they are fine with elephants. Because they keep on saying that we have imposed the land and we have to pay the tax for it. So even if the elephants are eating 20 or 30%, they are fine with it. But when the survival get into question, or survival of human being get to, there where the conflict are increasing. And for each of us, the most important thing is how do we keep the tolerance of the people toward the species in check or lower it, so that the negative interaction between the human and the elephant does not happen. So how do we do it? How do we work on it? How do we facilitate that coexistence between the human and the animal and the elephants? And one of the most important things that I think we need to address is the issue of the loss and degradation and fragmentation of the habitat. So we need to see how do we address that. The second thing that we need to probably work is containing the human-elephant conflict, both working short-term interventions as well as the long-term interventions. And how do we keep the tolerance of the people in this landscape at a level that they're able to bear the losses, but also agree to coexist with the species and work for the conservation of the species. And I think that's a major challenge for all of us working for the conservation, all of us a manager of how do we strike a balance between development and conservation of the species and work towards ensuring that the human elephant conflict level is at a level that people can tolerate. So one of the major things that we can think of in terms of managing the loss and fragmentation of the habitat is to plan at a landscape level, because the elephants, as I said, are big nomads. They need to move from one forest area to another forest area to meet the ecological requirement. So you need to maintain a continuity of forest areas across the landscape. And since a large extent of area has also been lost in last a decade or so, it's by facilitating the movement of animals from one patch to another, you are able to provide a larger patch of extent of area for the animal to survive and sustain the ecological need. So it's very, very important that we identify the connectivity or the corridor between the two landscapes or the two patches of large forest area so the animal can move. And how do we define a corridor? A corridor that is connects two larger patches of habitat with the animal move, and not connecting a larger patch with a smaller patch, because what will happen when you're moving an animal moves from a larger patch, which is viable enough to support elephants, to a smaller patch where the animal take refuge during the daytime and red crop, that could increase conflict. So any movement should not be a corridor, but a corridor should connect something with something and not something with nothing. That's very, very critical when you talk about corridors. And just for few of us, how does it help? Because by connecting the patches of forest, you are allowing the animal to have access to larger area, and access to larger areas is also providing you a mix of foraging habitat across the various seasons. They also provide the breeding partners and helps in maintaining flow between populations, so that the populations are strong enough to face the various stochastic events and the environmental impacts. And also in case of certain stochastic events or disease, it helps the animal to move from one patch to another and overcome the impact of those stochastic events. And that's very, very key. And these are just three major aspects that we need to look at to ensure that we have a viable population, or at least maintain those beta populations, so that you at the end get a larger population of breeding population, so that the gene flow is maintained and the strength of the population is increased. So we realized this almost 2.5 decades back, that one of the most critical things that we need to see is how do we ensure that the animal are able to move from one patch of forest to another patch, and hence try and see where the connectivity exists, what is the current status of this connectivity, and what needs to be done to protect this land. And we at Wildlife Trust of India, along with the Project Elephant Ministry of Environment Forests, the State Forest Department, meaning conservation partners who have been working on elephant issues, and researchers, went and length and width of the country looking at the entire elephant population habitat, and we were able to identify about a minimum of 88 corridors in 2005. As I said, the entire landscape being a dynamic concept, and with a change in the landscape, we again revisited these corridors after a decade in 2017, and the number increased from 88 in 2005 to 101 in 2017. And this increase of number, what does that indicate? It indicates that the landscape has become further fragmented over the years. And in this last 1 decade, a minimum of 7 corridors have been impaired. That is, they are no more being used by elephants to move between forests. And that's a major concern. And 7 corridors, I said, have got impaired, and there are many more, which if no urgent actions are taken, could be threatened. And it's very, very critical that we need to see and protect this. Not only looking at the numbers of elephants, we also try to look at what is the health of each and every corridor that has been identified. The one that was identified way back in 2005, and then when we, after a decade, when we revisited in 2007, how does the corridor looks like? And we realize that in just 10 years, the corridors have become longer and less wider, and that talks about the pressure on those landscape and on those habitat. And only 30% of the corridor currently are totally under forest compared to 24%, which was in 2005. Only about 1/5 of the corridor are free of human settlement currently. Almost 1/3 of the corridors have some level of encroachment, and encroachment is a major concern across the forest landscapes, across the elephant habitat area. Almost 2/3 of the corridors have agricultural land or national or state highways passing through it. Almost 1/4 of the corridors have railway line passing through it. 11% has canal, 20% has mining. And basically, why I'm saying this, and what was the need of looking at all this aspect? That's because when a manager, people like me and you, or the department, or others who are working to secure and protect these corridors, these are the issues that they need to resolve to make the corridor safe enough for the animal to move between patches. These are the various challenges that the managers faces to address and look at the issues. Yes, the challenges are there, but what do we do? Be silent? No. And at a national level, at a state level, the state government, the national government, and all of us are working toward to see that how can these connectivities be secured. And working for last 2 decades, over 2 decades to secure this corridor, we basically formed or formulated 4 broad strategies to secure this corridor. And these 4 strategies are not any copybook style, but these 4 strategies were based on the various approaches that we have been following to secure the corridor. And as a result, we were able to pin those 4 broad strategies. One is the private purchase model, where if there is a corridor which is there, and if the people are ready to part with the land, or if the people are ready to voluntarily move out of it, we purchase the land, voluntarily rehabilitate the people, provide the money to the people. And when I use the word we, it could be conservation organizations, could be state government, could be national government, who are doing a private purchase model. The second is the community securement model, and this has been largely done in area where the community are the major stakeholders. The community are the one who have been majorly owning the land, and largely in the state, North Indian state of Meghalaya, Arunachal Pradesh, and areas of Assam, working with the community through easements and trying to see how do we plan with the community at a landscape level, so that the critical stages that are important for the movement of animal are kept aside and are protected, and the community uses the remaining area. We provide them easement, we provide them the community support, and basically engage and empower them so that they become the custodian, they become the engine that drives to protect these corridors. And the next, the green corridor champions. Basically, these are the eyes, ears, and voice for each and every corridor. And this is a public securement model that we've been doing it to ensure that each and every corridors are protected. You become the voice of the corridor and do whatever ground intervention that is required with the local community, with the policymakers in that area, and the local government to protect and secure the corridor. And the 4th model is the government acquisition model, where we work as a bridge between the community and the government. But the government takes up the entire cost of protecting acquiring the land, but we facilitate between the government and the community to facilitate the process. And I'll just give 1 or 2 examples for each of these to show how does this happen. So one of the corridors that we have secured in the state of Kerala is the Tirunelveli corridor, which connects the population of Brahmagiri with Naga. So basically connects the population of Karnataka with Karnataka, passing through the Wayanad North Division and the Wildlife Sanctuary. And this narrow patch that you see here was dotted with about 5 settlements. And when we realized that this is at a critical stage that needs to be protected, we started talking to people and trying to understand what needs to be done to do that. And one of the things that emerged out of after a series of interaction for about few years is that if someone can help them to move out of the forest so that their life is also protected and their crops and other things that they're growing is protected, an animal also gets a free passage for movement. It was easier said than doing, but when we picked up from this idea, we worked with this community and ensured that how do we ensure that these people are moved out of this critical patch, because they being the critical patch and the animals moving, the conflict was very high. So how do we ensure a system that we can move them out of this corridor area, outside the corridor but close to the forest, so they have a good life and a good crop and whatever they grow that do, and the animal gets also a passage. So we rehabilitated about 37 families from 4 villages from this corridor area. Wildlife Trust of India and the ANC have joined hand, and 4 villages were moved out of the corridor and made free of human settlements. And this entire area, and what we provided as a package was land for land. We provided them land for habitation. We provided them wetlands, which is basically for agriculture activities, with irrigation facilities, with other infrastructures. For the people that travel and the BPB families, we provided them with the land along with houses and the other civic amenities in this area. And those who are, tribals or who had enough resources, for them we just provided the land for them. But that handholding continues in this area for a long time. The last set of villages that we moved out was in 2011. But then our sociologists and biologists kept on monitoring this area to see that the area that we have fed out of human habitation has that I'm sorry, the video is not playing, but I've shown. So that entire corridor has been taken over by elephants, tiger, gaur, and many other species of animals, and they're happily moving between the 2 forest patches. So what we did was that the 37 and a half acres of land that was secured in the landscape, we have handed over to the State Forest Department, that is the Kerala Forest Department, and they have notified this land as a part of Wildlife Sanctuary and North Forest Division, and then notified it. So I think our work ended by securing this corridor, handing over the land to the State Forest Department, who have been then further managing and protecting the corridor by providing legal status. And our team of biologists and sociologists are just monitoring the corridor, that post securement, how the animals are using it, and the life of the human being that we have touched. Are they having a good life or not? And when we looked at good life, it doesn't mean only economic benefit. We have looked at many other social, social parameters of the family that we touched. Whether the women who have moved out, are they staying together? Are the education, the children's getting enough education facilities in and around that area? Has the health status improved? And the other social parameters. And we have been also working with the local government, the tribal department, the state government, to see how do we channelize the state various schemes into this area, so that these people who have come forward and have contributed for securing these corridors, they also get the benefit of conservation. And that creates a model or conveys the model to a larger spectrum of people to come forward and secure. You as a conservation organization, is our main responsibility is how do we create those successful model that could be replicated by other friends, that could be replicated by the government at both at the state and the central level. The second model that we have used is the community securement model in the state of Meghalaya. We have been working to see how do we protect the entire landscape from the West Garo Hills to South Garo Hills. This is the Nokrik National Park, and this is the Balfakram Wildlife Sanctuary. So how do we provide the connectivity from here to here? And if you look at the broad, and in this area, almost 92% of the forest is owned by the community, and almost only around 7 to 8% is only owned by the state forest department. So it was key that you work with the community and set aside land, and there were the example, and they have set an example of how do you do a landscape level plan so that the critical stages that is key for the animal to move, they are protected. You create a buffer along the area, because this is the area that has long-term viability to move. So we have been working to see how to secure the corridor and protect the habitat. The certain patches of forest that has been opened up because of slash and burn cultivation, or because of mining and other activities. How do we restore those critical patches in that entire connectivity area? How do we empower the community? And that was the key of how do we empower the community to understand the resources that they own, that to make them understand. When I use the word resources, I meant the forest, I meant the animals, I meant the various plants that are equally important for medical and other things. And how can they be a custodian of protecting these entire resources that they have got in blessings, and how can they pass the baton to the next generation? So training them to look at the resources, training them to map the resources, training them to demarcate the corridors and the landscape, training them to monitor the users of animals in these corridors, and so doing the entire biodiversity assessment, and thereby protecting the guardrail spine. And this, just to tell you that this is again a 6th scheduled area. So as per the Indian Constitution, the tribals have been given the right to govern. So you have the national government, you have the state government, you have the local government, and in this case is the Garo Hills Autonomous District Council, and they have their own law to govern the forest and the resources that's there. So we use one of the provision of the Garo Hills Autonomous District Council forest law of setting aside land for protection. When the community comes forward, they set aside the land for protection of the corridors and the landscape, and these landscapes are then notified as village reserve forest under the Garo Hills Autonomous District Council. So talking to the village, convincing them, making them understand the criticality of area, these villages slowly have been coming forward to set aside the land for protection. And in last 1.5 decade, over 5,000 hectares of area has been set aside with the community as villages of forest. And in today's age, whenever we don't feel like giving even a square inch of area, then the community have come forward and given a huge extent of land for conservation. 2 corridors have been secured, 2 more corridors are in the pipeline, and about 400 hectares of area has been restored. We have been also sharing the benefit of conservation with people. It could be a livelihood support, it could be a lifestyle support. So based on, and all these villages that are there are quite remote villages. So we work with the community, understand the socio-economic, prepare the micro plan, understand the need, and based on the need, the assistance are being provided to this community. So that's the thing. The third model that we have been doing is, as I said, we lost about 7 to 8 corridors in last 1 decade, and many more were, in the process of getting impaired. So we have been working with the local people who are there, the clubs, the local NGOs, some key stakeholders in the area, and engaging them as a green corridor champion who works as the eye, ear, and voice for the corridors. It are just like you can say remote cameras, which is zooming into each and every corridor, keeping an eye so that there is no land use change in this area. And in the last about 7 to 8 years, we have been able to form about 22 green corridor champions across 8 villages, covering about 55 corridors. And our aim is to see how do we ensure that you have someone to be keeping an eye on each and every 101 corridor, and ensuring that there are no land use changes, and in case if it happens, just comes to the knowledge of the forest department, the conservation organization, and others who are working so that corrective measures could be taken. They are the one who have been looking at the functionality of the corridor in terms of the animal movement, talking to the various stakeholders, doing various interventions and community sensitization so that the corridors are secured. And that's very, very key for a diverse country like India, for a huge country like India, with large number of states and with about 29,000 elephants across more than 150,000 square kilometer area that has elephants. So you need to have such diverse mechanism to keep an eye on each and every corridor. The next important problem has been the linear infrastructures passing through the elephant areas. And it's very, very key to see that how do we plan in a way, and when we plan such linear infrastructure, understand what is the impact of it. On the first hand, we should be trying to follow the robust linear hierarchy, that in case if it is possible to avoid certain critical patches, avoid it, and so that there is no threat happening to the wildlife. But in case if it is not possible, then you realign and see if the railway line or the power line or other thing that can it be taken to other way so that the impact on the forest is less. If that is not possible, then please take interventions. Please spend more time on the drawing board so that the impact of a road or highway or railway line passing through is less, and we take mitigation measures and also compensate for the losses that's happening here. Just an example, for example, this is the state of Nepal, and this red line that you see was a railway line that was being planned. And this is the Royal Chitwan Park, and this is the Valmiki Tiger Reserve in Bihar. Now, had this railway line come, this entire movement of tigers, rhino, and other animals would have been impacted. So the conservation organizations work with the government and the railway department, and they convince them that line moving to the northern part of the park so that the entire fragmentation doesn't happen, and they were able to convince and realign it, and now the entire landscape is protected. And that is what we need to do. A large number of animals getting knocked down, so, and that's very matter of concern. So it's key that we keep an eye on each and every area where you have such linear infrastructure passing through it, identify the hotspots where they are doing, and we at Wildlife Trust of India, working with the railway, with the state government, have worked in many states and have been able to map this connectivity. And when we look at the critical hotspot where most of these actions are happening, and then looking at the reason, we realize that these are the 6 or 7 reasons that are the reasons of ecological reason, the food requirement and availability in various parts of the habitat, the physical factors like embankment, turning on the tracks, where the vision becomes impacted, the technical things like speed or the food waste being dumped along the railway line and attracting animals, lack of awareness between the drivers, and the lack of coordination. And it's not that every area the same reason, it's a combination of these reasons that happens. And you need to see how do you look at it. For example, to improve the visibility, try and clear the vegetation along the tracks, or where there's a steep embankment that could be leveled so that in case if the animals and the train comes and animals, they're able to negotiate it. Certain places the railway lines are quite elevated. So can you create a ramp like this, which in the Coimbatore-Palakkad section, the state forest government and their work to do and create that thing. There are various, mitigation structures which have been successfully working across the globe, and we need to, when we are planning these railway lines or the highway, we need to ensure that these mitigation structures are created, whether it could be an underpass for an animal to move or for an overpass for the animal to move. And there are a lot of such specifications across the landscape for the type of animal that they're using the thing and what should be the dimension of these structures. For example, if you look at in the entire Coimbatore-Palakkad section, one underpass has been created below the railway line where animals are using by the Tamil Nadu Forest Department and the railway. And for example, in Balaghat in Madhya Pradesh, on the railway line, such overpasses have been created for animal to move between patches. This is what you need to look at and see that it's not that the linear infrastructures are an issue. We probably need to spend more time on the drawing board and ensure that the impact of these linear infrastructures could be minimized by creating such structures. It's equally important that where do you create those structures, the overpasses, the underpasses, or the other thing. So it's very, very important to understand that where the animals are moving across the landscape. And this, for example, is an example of NH 209 in the Satyamangalam Chamarajanagar landscape. and each and every area was looked at wherever the animals are moving and what is the type of structures that you need, not only for the elephants but tigers, those and small animals, and then you plan such mitigation structures. There are certain good manuals and protocols that is available. For example, the eco-friendly manual for green infrastructure produced by the Ministry of Environment, Forest, Wildlife Institute. And we at the IUCN Asian Elephant Specialist Group and the World Commission of Protected Area Corridor Specialist Group have formed a transport working group, of which I am a co-chair, and we have just come up with a new publication that talks about this mitigation structures that could be used across the elephant landscape. And this is based on, again, the successive example that been implemented across the 13 range states that has elephants and how beautiful these structures have been. So that's a good handbook that's been published and will soon be available for people to refer to and the managers to refer to when they're doing that. We can use technologies, and large number of technologies are being used, whether it's artificial intelligence, seismic sensors, infrared sensors, and other sensors to detect the animal in and around the tracks or railway lines or in conflict scenarios, alert people, alert driver, so that the collisions could be avoided. And we need to probably use technology more efficiently, more in a way across the landscape, either railway line or highway, or maybe in the other conflict scenarios to protect your cropland, to ensure that the people are alerted when the elephants are around. That's very much an evolving science that we practice. Effective barriers. Again, barriers are work when you for small areas, where you can't think of creating blocking the entire forest area, but it works very good in a small area when the habitation, human habitation, probably you can fence off those habitations in this area. And for example, we have used such hanging fences in the Manas landscape, and they're working very well. Or such railway line fences, if done properly, is very, very effective. For example, this has been done about 2 decades back in Posita in Jharkhand, working perfectly well, and that has helped in preventing elephants' movement on the human habitation side or the agricultural land. You need to create a system where the people involved in the landscape become the primary, the first layers of defense. So you need to sensitize people in this conflict hotspots, creating the primary response team who keep an eye on the elephant movement or the other wild animal movement, and in case if the name, just ensuring that you provide a safe passage for the animal rather than creating in conflict scenarios, human being chasing them, driving them. That's to prevent them. Ensure that they manage the crowd and the animal gets a free passage to move between the habitat. Or in certain cases where you need to have an intervention, create a rapid response team that is a specialized team of veterinarians, biologists, sociologists with an equipment support system to guard and protect the thing. And the last and the most important, and again, the mobile veterinary services in certain cases when you need to restrain the animal or the animal gets into conflict scenario and need to be confiscated, such mobile services with a veterinary there with other support systems, they reach the interior part of the forest where the conflict scenario is happening, and in case the animal needs to be restrained or needs to be captured, they can do that. But the most important thing is also to see how do we keep the tolerance of the people in control and probably ensuring an effective system for the loss of human life or the loss of the property. And there are various such schemes practiced across the landscape, and that is very, very important to ensure to prevent retaliation towards an animal, so that the losses that the people are saying, if a part of it could be supported, so that they are able to bear the loss. But again, I'm saying it's an ex gratia support that you are providing. It's not a compensation. You cannot compensate for the loss of life or the property that you are get damaged. The most important thing also to keep the tolerance of the people in check is to reaching out to people, sensitizing them, creating awareness about the species, of the landscape, how our lifestyle is impacting the habitat, impacting the species, and what we can do to protect this. And we at Wildlife Trust of India, with the state government, the national government, and the conservation partners, we have been trying to reach to each and every elephant landscape each and every corridor through various campaigns mechanism. The Gaj Yatra taking the campaigns to each and every corridor, Gaj Utsav celebrating the elephants at the state and district level with various stakeholders, and Gaj Mahotsav is a national level campaign that we did way back in 2017-18. And what do we do in these such campaigns? If the campaign is not just to talk about the problem that the animal or the humans are facing, but to bring this species more close to the human, keeping in the conflict scenarios, keeping in the various problems that the humans and the animals are facing, and how do we facilitate the coexistence? How do we talk about things that each of us should be doing to minimize conflict and strengthen the coexistence in this landscape? We have been doing it in various states in Meghalaya, Odisha, Tamil Nadu, Kerala, and we plan to take it to many other states where they are important, which are important elephant areas, and to see that we cover all the 101 corridors. And what do we do? In such corridors, we try and touch upon every strata of our society that could contribute towards protecting and saving the species. The children, the Bal Gaja, reaching out to the small children, school level and village level, so that they are sensitized on the importance of the elephant and how can they protect. The media, which plays a very, very critical role in protecting the animal, and how can they be more, portrayed in a more little responsible way, so that the animal should not be looked as a villain, but also a fact that because of the change in land use, these conflicts are happening, and how can human being, what are the various schemes the government and others are doing, how can we probably raise this concern, but also how can we get people support to save this species. Using people from the art to portray our close connection of elephants, and use art, media, film to convey, because that's again is a very, very strong vehicle, media, to convey the message. And we have been using the various art facilities, media, filmmakers, to see that we take the message of elephant conservation to them. We have been also involving, India is a country of multiple faith, diverse country, so we will be also involving the religious leader to take forward the message of conservation to this. And the most important thing we have also been doing is interacting with the policy makers. Not one, the responsibility of protecting the elephant is not just the State Forest Department, but each and every department are equally responsible to protect this. Each and every policy makers are equally important to protect it. So we have been trying to reach to the bureaucrats across the line departments. We have been trying to reach at the people representing this area, trying to reach out to the various technological innovations that can be reached to address these issues, using cinema to convey the message of concern and use them. We have done a Gaj Mahotsav in Kerala. We have done a thing in Tamil Nadu. We have taken the message to Odisha, and this is a small clip which I request Mr. Mohit if you can play, and that's probably my last presentation. Mr. Mohit, if you can just play this 1 minute video, please.
Yes, absolutely. I'll do this right now. Friends, stay on. It's a video that I'm going to broadcast. Enjoy the video. Get yourself a cup of tea if you like, and let's get started.
So if you can see this video, what we are trying to done is the various spectrum of people that we talk about. How can each and every of us care for the species at various levels? That is what we have been trying to do. The species needs support of all of us. It's all the survival of the species depends on all of us of how we can do that. And I think that's a great responsibility in all of us to take forward the message of conservation and contribute a bit to protect this magnificent animal.
Shall I play, Dr. Sandeep?
Please,
shall I play the video?
Go ahead.
Dr. Sandeep, I think you're on mute. I think if you can just chat in the chat box, type in the chat box, I think. If the video needs to be stopped.
I think, Dr. Sandeep, you need to unmute yourself.
Can you hear me now?
Yes, I can hear you now.
So you can
Yeah.
see for yourself that the protection and securement of the species is not the responsibility of one organization or people, but for all of us. And I think we need to all come together, join this momentum, and ensure that the elephant gets a free passage uh, and able to survive, and see that the elephants and the human coexist across the landscape where they are found. I think that's all from me. Thanks so much.
Yeah, we have some questions, Dr. Sandeep. This was a wonderful, wonderful, very deep knowledge session, and thank you for bringing this to us. I had no clue that you would cover this webinar in such depth, and I think it really, really pleased many people, and they're taking away this knowledge home, and they're far richer than they used to be. Now, what I want to do is I want to ask you a few questions that people have typed here.
Well,
Some are basic questions and some are a little tricky. They want to know what is the lifespan of an elephant.
it's just like human beings, roughly 20 years.
Up to 80 years, right? Okay,
Yeah.
right. So then the next question is from Tanu Seni, where Tanu is asking, what's the negative impact of Garo community? Why do they need to be empowered?
See, as I said, the Garo community owns about 90%, 90 to 92% of the land, right? And when and they have been the custodian, they've been managing it well, but also the way of their sustenance and livelihood is slash and burn cultivation. So they are more of an agrarian society. So what we needed to do was show them the way how can they manage the landscape and how can they do it in a way that the entire wildlife is protected, but also the livelihood is not impacted. So probably showing that how can they be the custodian and protecting the landscape. That's what we have been doing. And probably they've been managing the landscape so well, and that's the reason the area has so much diversity of wildlife and the forest area. So they've been doing fabulously well, just using their traditional knowledge and a scientific knowledge, and we are synergizing to see how do we bring in more results.
Wonderful. Deepika Sinha is asking, is there any upcoming plan to minimize elephant electrocution mortality?
There are a lot of plans. See, there are a lot of plans that the state governments have done. The electricity, their panels have been formed, committees have been formed to look at this. Many of the state governments are quite proactively working to see in certain areas passing the forest if they can be taken underground, or they can do an insulation. So state governments have realized the fact, and the other agencies are also helping that. Conservation organizations like us are also helping them identify the places where it needs to be done, so that general realization has come forward that these resources are quite critical and needs to be protected. So they are doing the bit to do that. Probably the momentum needs to be increased and taken forward.
Wonderful, wonderful. There's a question by Mrityunjay Rai which says, how can elephants remember their corridors even after 50 years?
As I said, they're quite intelligent animal. They also have a very strong memory, right? So they are able to identify the landscape they're using. And as I said, for example, they know in which season, which is the place to get food, which is grassland, or browseland, or in times of, drought, where to get water, which season to get water. So they're quite intelligent animal, have a strong memory. So they know which other patches that are safe for them to move between habitat, and that's what it is. And that is the reason, when we talk about corridor, we don't create corridor. We use those areas that is used by an animal to move to protect and secure that. So you can't create corridors, but you need to see that the passages that they're using, that's quite an intelligent animal.
So, at what age elephants start going into must?
But the sexual maturity generally, 10 to 15 years, they become sexually mature. So generally at the age of about 13, 14 or 15 years, that process starts around 8, 17, 18. You can see them almost in Moscow. So it's this entire sexual maturity is between the age of 10 to 15 years.
I have a fantastic question for you. Shlaka is asking, how can we join this project as interns to help elephants live long? I
Taka,
love this question.
thanks so much for first asking this question. We need people. As I said, we need to create that mass movement, and all of you are welcome to join this across the landscape, whichever landscape that you are there, whichever corridor you are there. Please feel to connect with our team, and we'll be more than happy to engage with you and to use your services to push corridors, and not only elephants but the other animals in the entire landscape. So most welcome.
This is so heartening. Shlaka has just asked the right question. Why are we doing these webinars? We're doing these webinars
And we need many solakas across the landscape to
yes,
protect the species. Yeah.
and we're doing these webinars to get people like you
Yes.
to get support for elephants. So good. Aishwarya is asking, working with communities, how can one make sure the perception of the community stays the same throughout the generation and doesn't wash out after one generation is no more?
That's the reason you see, working with the community is tricky, but also it pays long-term dividend. And when I was talking about creating sensitizing community, sensitizing people, we need to. It can't be a one-off affair. So when we work with the community, we require to have that presence, be in touch with them. So any landscape that we've been working for any of this project are 15 years, 20 years, 25 years. For example, just let me tell you one species called whale shark along the west coast in Gujarat. I'm sorry, I'm taking it away from elephants. Just to give you an example, where we started doing the campaign almost 20 years back, working with the fishing communities and others. Later on, we realized that new generations have come in who are there, the children. So we can't say that we reached out to the parents and that generation. Probably we need to take this campaign at the next level itself. Same thing is there across the landscape, across the people. This has to be a continuous process.
Correct. So Nandalal is asking, what is the percentage of tuskers in the total elephant population in India?
Well, the percentage of tuskers is a concern in a country and many other countries, because the percentage is going down drastically. I can't say the exact numbers, but there are very less number of tuskers left out, less than 2,000 probably in the entire landscape.
Right. Some people are rearing elephants for their livelihood. Is it legal?
They are rearing. So no, it's not a legal thing in the country. I think the wildlife protection and they are protected. You can't do that. Of course, those that is there in captivity, and if their animals are born there, that's fine, that's legal. But you can't be bringing it and rearing it to breed.
Right. There is a question by Tanu again. What is the statistics of poaching? What's the state right now?
Well, if you look at the entire poaching scenario in the country in last 20 years, there has been, of course, drastic decrease, but still is a major a concern in few states, in few pockets, and we need to be active to do that. But yes, if you look at the overall trend of poaching in last 20 years, it's on the decline. But again, it's a concern. There are certain states, there are certain places where the poaching still continues, and we need to keep an eye.
Right. Chirag is asking, how much water and food is eaten by elephants? What do they mostly eat?
Roughly about 250 kgs of green fodders and roughly about 200 liters of water. Roughly, plus and minus.
Right. Okay.
As I said, most of the elephants, if you look at the research that's been done, they have been preferring species about 80 to 100 odd species, depending on whatever is available in that particular landscape.
Right. Which state has more number of elephants in India? Most number of elephants?
Mostly in the state of, I have given you the picture there, Tamil Nadu has large number of elephants. Assam has large number of elephants. Karnataka has a
Some
reasonably good number of large elephants. So these are states which has reasonably large population of elephants. Tamil Nadu, Karnataka, to Kerala, Assam,
wonderful.
and
I think,
yeah.
yeah, I think it's been a wonderful, absolutely fantastic knowledge session by you, Dr. Sandeep. And I will have to, because this webinar is usually for 1 hour, but we've spent one and a quarter, and that's been absolutely fantastic. I want to tell people that people who missed out the beginning, or some of them who have not attended or haven't been here or had to drop off, they will get the replay link of this webinar 12 hours later in their inbox. They'll get the link, they can see the webinar, they can download it with Wish, and please stay tuned for other webinars. This series of Rite of Passage has started with WTI, and WTI team will continue to bring us more information on different species, Rite of Passage, as we go along for the next 12 months. We are also screening films related to species in India Habitat Center in New Delhi. The next one will be on March 18th. So you got to be there physically. You got to be there in person. And I'm asking people who live in Delhi or visiting Delhi during that time to please pay us a visit, be there, have a cup of tea, and watch the films that we'll be screening. And we're really, really grateful, thankful at Asian Adventures and Wildlife Trust of India for you to join this session. You all came in very big numbers, and I'm so happy that there are so many elephant lovers and within our country. We just need more people like Shlaka to put their hands up and then say, I am there for these elephants. And WTI will do something to bring you in at every stage.
Thanks so much, Moiji, and thank you all for joining this conversation. And as Mr. Moiji said, we'll try and bring many such, interactions almost on a monthly basis, talking about the various aspects of elephant conservation, especially targeting towards the Rite of Passage and the work that many of us are doing across the landscape. Thanks so much for your time and
thank you. Thank you. And then if you got more questions, you've got WTI website address. Feel free to send your questions on WTI website to Dr. Sandeep, and when he has time, he'll be able to answer them for you, or some other team member will also take it up.
Absolutely.
Thank you very much.
Thanks so much.
Thank you. Thank you, Dr. Sandeep.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, my team. I love you all. Thank you. Namaste.
Yes.